Fantastic. So we should be recording now. So welcome to this month's showcase event. My name is Alison Coates, and I'm an emotional intelligence coach, trainer, facilitator, and I'm based down in Durban, South Africa. But I work globally. I have clients that I work with at the moment, both in the UK, and I'm doing some work for an old manager of mine, actually, and she's now based in Hong Kong. And of course, I have my South African clients as well. And what I love to do during these showcase events is really open the opportunity for more people to get to experience emotional intelligence, because we do an exercise where you can do that, but also for people to get an insight into how it is that I work with my clients, and a little bit of the science behind the brain-based tools and techniques that I use in my coaching and in my training. So I have a long career as a management consultant before I became an emotional intelligence coach, and I worked mainly as a project program manager. So my career has really taken many paths. But what it's given me is it's given me the opportunity to really reflect back on when I was a management consultant. And, you know, knowing what I know now, I would very definitely have done things differently, because we have to always ask ourselves the questions: why do we do what we do if we know what we know? Great question to ask. And I can see someone else has just joined. Just going to let them in. And so, yes, in reflecting back on that part of my career, really what I know now allows me to, and it's what drives my passion for these showcase events, to allow more and more people the opportunity to really get that experience. Fantastic. Welcome, Gatika. You are very welcome. We've literally just started. So pop into the chat where you're from, pop into the chat what it is that you'd like to get out of today's session. I'm going to start screen share because I do have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to be sharing with everyone. And so that should be coming up on your screen now. Fantastic. So today we're talking all about hiring for emotional intelligence. So I'm curious to know, and again, please feel free to use the chat. What are your roles in terms of being involved in recruitment, in hiring? Are you, do you do any recruitment at the moment? Are you responsible for hiring people into project teams or hiring people into the organization itself? Be really great to know what your experiences or what your accountabilities are in terms of that role. And with that in mind, I have a question that I like to ask you all as we start this presentation. And this really is an opportunity for you just to reflect on your role and on the work that you do and the people that you are, that you work with. Right, so I can see there's some more people joining us. Apologies for that. That's all great. Nadine, HR manager responsible for overseeing recruitment across the business. Thank you so much, Nadine. Wonderful, great, a huge responsibility that, working as the HR manager and also in recruitment. So my first role in my career, before I got into management consulting, I worked as an industrial psychologist, and that's what led me into becoming a management consultant. So I worked in HR for the first 5 years of my career, and some of that was doing recruitment in IT and in banking. So it's lovely to meet a fellow HR person, and thank you for joining us here today, Nadine. But let's get into the presentation. So I have a question, and I always encourage people who attend my presentations to please grab a pen and paper. So you might like to just jot down some notes or some of the answers to these questions. And my first question is this: how do you think your company, or maybe your clients' needs, are going to change in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of the things that they might need to know about different competencies or different skills, please feel free to use the chat for any of these answers as we go through the presentation. So if you were considering where you are today, how do you think that those roles and those needs are going to change in the next 5 to 10 years? I mean, we've just had a huge change in the way that we work globally, which I don't think any of us really predicted at the end of 2019. But what else do you think is coming down your pipeline in terms of what to expect from the way of work? And if we look back over the last 5 years, 6 years even, I'm just going to take us back in terms of where we were in 2016. And in 2016, the World Economic Forum put out a report called The Future of Work. And in this report, they were writing the report based on the very fast approaching fourth industrial revolution and the very fast approaching change in roles around AI. And what they discovered in their research were these top 10 skills. And what we see here, even back in 2016, emotional intelligence was listed out as number 6. So in the top 10 skills. So despite the fact that we were moving into a far more mechanized and robotic way of work, we also start to see some of the more people skills coming through. Thank you, Sarabi. More flexibility, more transparency, quicker response rates. Yes, I agree with you, especially with the flexibility. And isn't it so true that we are starting to speak about, I'm sure you all hear it a lot, just how we all need to become more adaptable, more agile in the way that we work. You know, agile used to be something that we would really talk about in project management and not necessarily in the general way of work. So yes, I agree with you there. So this was 2016. Let's fast forward to 2019. And in 2019, LinkedIn actually put out a report, and in this report in 2019, where they surveyed over 600 million people and 20 million different jobs. Again, we see from this survey that emotional intelligence is in the top 5 of our softer people skills. And this survey was further supported by some work done in the same year at Capgemini. You might recognize Capgemini as one of the top consulting firms. And here they researched 750 executives. So now we're looking at our senior managers, C-suite, and 74% of them agreed that in the next 5 years, emotional intelligence is a must-have skill. So we're really starting to see the picture building for the importance of these essential people-related skills. And then what happened? And then we had 2020. And really what we started to see last year was that the pandemic, and much to the point that you've just raised in the comments, the pandemic really has pushed us into remote working, pushed us into accelerating the digitization of work, and as well as accelerating the automation of work. Think about in the last 20 months, how your role, your clients, your customers, your colleagues, how you've had to adapt, even just working from home. Look at all the new apps that we're all using to manage our time, to communicate with each other. Automation, digitization, and remote working really has been accelerated. So this was 2020. And it got me thinking, so, well, what are the latest stats then that have come out? And the World Economic Forum put out another report at the end of last year, which now is looking towards the next 5 years. And this was in response to the global pandemic. So here again, we see the landscape changing somewhat. A different set of skills now starts to appear. And despite the fact that emotional intelligence has dropped down the list, we're now sitting at 11. When you look at this list of skills, so many of them are still your people-related human factor skills. These are becoming really, really important for us to pay attention to in the workplace. What's more important from this report is they also recognize that by 2025, 50% of your workforce are going to need some form of reskilling. And when you look at the type of reskilling that the workforces are going to need, 40% of that reskilling comes down to our core skills. So our essential people-related core skills. This is quite a lot of information for us to start to consider when we are thinking about how do we build our teams for the future? How do we build productivity, build efficiencies into such an uncertain world? Because things are changing so rapidly, we are having to become so much more agile and flexible. But the one thing that I think is clear from just these few studies that I've shared with you is that people skills, human factors, and your softer competencies really are starting to become very important and essential in the workplace. If you have any questions at any time, I'm very happy for you to pop a question into the chat, or even you're welcome to use one of the reactions on your keyboard. So today is all about why even look at emotional intelligence in the workplace. And I want to give you an insight into the business case for emotional intelligence. And then also the key thing for you to take away from today, I'm super passionate about giving you something that you can actually use after this session, is these 7 competencies that you can immediately, especially like yourself, Nadine, involved in recruitment, you can start to look out for these competencies that will allow you to start to recruit and hire for emotional intelligence. But in order for me to do this, I'd love for you to experience emotional intelligence for yourself. So I've got a short exercise we're going to do together. So if you could grab a pen and paper, if you don't already have one, I'm going to be asking you a series of questions. And all I need you to do is just mark down on a scale of 1, which is low, or 5, which is high, where you would rate yourself or where you would answer this particular question. So the first thing I want you to do is I would like you to think about a colleague, somebody you work with currently, or maybe you've worked with them in the past, who you just really enjoy spending time with. So this is somebody who you like being around, and yeah, you just get on really well with them. So this is somebody who you really enjoy being around. So when you think of this person, maybe you want to write their name at the top of your page. Here's your first question. On a scale of 1, low, 5 is high, how excited do you get when you know you're about to have an experience with them? So maybe their name comes up on your phone, maybe an email's dropped into an inbox, maybe you're going to go and have a meeting with this person. How excited do you feel? 1 being low, 5 being high. That's question number 1. Question number 2, apologies, is how relaxed does this person make you feel? So on a scale of 1 to 5 again, how relaxed do you feel? Number 1, do you feel like you could almost like hide in the cupboard? Because most of us can do that now that we work from home, when you see their name on your phone. Or are you so like, you just feel like you can be an open book. You feel like you can be genuine around them. You feel like you could be your authentic self. How relaxed do they make you feel? That's question number 2. And then the third question, I'd like you to think of 3 emotions that comes to mind of how this person made you feel when you were either working with them, when you were on the phone with them, or when you were in an experience, an interaction with them. How did they make you feel on a day-to-day basis? Just write those 3 words down on your piece of paper. And we'll share these answers in a little while, but for now, just keep them on your piece of paper. Okay, now what I would like you to do is turn your piece of paper over and take a deep breath. Because now what I want you to do is think about that person, that colleague, that client, somebody who work with either now or in the past, who really, really frustrates you. This is somebody who you did not get on well with. So question number 1 on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being low, 5 being high. How excited does this person make you feel? 1 being low and a 5 being high. Second question, how relaxed does this person make you feel? Does this person make you want to put on your rhinoceros hide? And I say that, it's like a South African thing that I used to say when I worked in London. Like, you know, that thick rhinoceros hide, like you just want to hide your authentic self. Or does this person, a number 5, make you feel like you could just be authentic? You can wear your heart on your sleeve and you could talk openly and freely to them. And then question number 3 for this person who makes you feel very frustrated. What are those 3 emotions that comes to mind when you think of this person? Just write those 3 words down. Great. So you can either unmute, or you are very welcome to, to put your answers into the chat box. And what I would like you to do, I'm just going to open my chat so that I can see it. What I would like you to do is into the chat. Sorry, somebody else has just joined us. Into the chat, please just type your answers or even unmute. I'm very happy to share the stage, share this audience with everyone else. Thinking of that person who you really enjoyed, just pop down your answers in terms of the scores that you gave them. So perhaps your score is that you felt a 4 and a 5, or maybe it was a 2, a 3 and a 5. What was your score when you were thinking about this person that made you feel really excited? So just a 3 and a 5, and Nadine, calm, happy, and content. Beautiful emotions that somebody could make you feel at work or when you were working with a client. Fantastic. 3 and a 5. Anyone else got any responses? I'll just wait a second. I know sometimes the chat takes a little bit of time to catch up. But generally what we see with this person number 1, the person who you feel really excited about, is we do generally see 3s, 4s, and 5s. So you felt really excited. You felt really relaxed. Great. A 5 and a 5, hopeful. What a beautiful, beautiful emotion for somebody to have you experience, cheerful and happy. That's incredible. What a wonderful way to be able to work alongside somebody. Right. What about that other person, the second person who you felt frustrated by? What results, what scores did you give this person? How excited did they make you feel? How relaxed did you feel? And what are 3 words that you would use to describe how you actually felt on a day-to-day basis? 1 and a 1, yeah. Anxious, exhausted, and sometimes very angry. People who frustrate you tend to drain all of your energy, your mental energy, as well as your physical energy. So yes, I'm not surprised, Nadine, that this person made you feel exhausted. I'll just give it a second and see if anyone else has got a response. We've had some new people join us. You are very welcome. We've just completed an emotional intelligence exercise, which allows us to really tune into how somebody who we enjoyed spending time with and somebody who made us feel really frustrated actually had us feel. Great. A 2 and a 1, discouraged, frustrated, and agitated. You know, that agitated mind is so distracted. I bet when you were working with this person, it was very difficult for you to concentrate. It was very difficult for you to actually get things done. That agitated mindset. These are very strong emotions. And so what I've taken you through here is a very brief experience for you to experience emotional intelligence. And let's just share that in detail, because the important factor here for you all to take away from this exercise is this beautiful quote by Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. I bet that if this person was somebody who you worked with in the past, that could have even been 3, 5, 10 years ago in the past. We never forget how somebody made us feel. Think about those strong, unproductive emotions that frustrated person had you experience. And what we tend to see, and this is what happens in the workplace, is we've got all these emotions, and these emotions, it's like, you know, they are bubbling under the water. These are feelings that bubble under the water. And when you understand neuroscience and you understand a little bit about how the brain works, how we feel determines our decisions. Our emotions determine our decisions, and our decisions determine our behavior. So when we're feeling anxious and worried, we're more likely to be reactive and problem focused. When we're feeling stressed or uncertain, we can be very aggressive because we're nervous, we're agitated, we make more assumptions. We tend to react rather than respond. These are some of the behaviors that we see with these very unproductive emotions in the workplace. What about that person who you really enjoyed? Here we see, you know, different emotions: empowered, happy. I can't remember some of the words that you were using, but informed and valued, content. I've had people say that they felt, I think Nadine, you said it, calm. We see a completely different set of far more productive behaviors. When people feel empowered, they are more likely to innovate. When people feel informed, they start to have a solution-focused way about them. They care about each other. So we see a very different set of behaviors when our emotional states are productive and positive. Why is this? Well, again, drawing on neuroscience, pleasant feelings have a broaden and build effect. When we are primed for productive, pleasant feelings, we think more expansively. We are far better able to connect with other people, communicate with people. Pleasant feelings actually allow us to focus on our goals. We become more goal-oriented. And one of the other things that's really great for us, especially in the workplace, when we are primed for pleasant feelings, we actually enjoy following instructions. The reverse is true of unpleasant feelings. When we are primed for unproductive, strong, and unpleasant feelings, we have a far more blinkered view. We're very reactive, we're very sensitive. We can become defensive and want to buck the system rather than follow the instructions. We are more closed-minded and less engaging. So my question to you, now that you have had this very short experience in only a few minutes for yourself of emotional intelligence, is how does this play out in your team, in your organization? Where would you say the emotional culture is in your team? Is your organization priming for those pleasant feelings, or are you still struggling with some of the hangover of 2020, where we've got far more of these nervous uncertainties in our workforce. And neither is right or wrong. There's no judgment here. You'll be very, I think if you were listening carefully, I use the word productive and unpleasant rather than positive or negative, because I'm very clear and careful not to judge. We're not judging, we're just noticing where we are at in our team and in our organization, because it's in accepting and noticing where we're at, we can start to put the plans in place to move forward. And this really is emotional intelligence. It's that set of skills that makes people great at managing themselves and others. It gives us that ability to connect, communicate, and collaborate. This provides far more opportunity in the workplace for leadership, relationships, better stress management, because we're not reactive. We can be calm and grounded in the way that we manage some of these uncertainties, the decisions that we need to make, and it just primes for that overall individual as well as corporate well-being. And the business case for emotional intelligence stretches far beyond this. I've just got two things that I would like to share with you about why I am so passionate about introducing this into as many organizations as I can. The first one being resilience. And I know that this word has been overused in the last 20 months, but we know that people with a high EI are less stressed because they have got the tools, the practices, and the habits to be able to connect to calm. And so they're more resilient at work. They've got that ability to bounce back. When we've got leaders with high EI, they lead teams who themselves report that they feel more positive. Think about that person who you enjoyed. Was that person perhaps a boss or someone more senior than you? And also, when we are priming for these positive, when we're priming for these productive emotions, when we are supporting our organization with growing emotional intelligence skills, behaviors, and competencies, we have then started working towards a mentally healthy workplace. And if 2020 has shown us anything, taking care of the psychological safety of your workplace is so important. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is teamwork. Of course, there are many reasons why emotional intelligence is important for organizations. The bottom line, it also, it does support your bottom line. But teamwork for me is so fundamental because we are all social beings. The opportunity to collaborate with other people, the opportunity to belong in an organization and in a team. Next to food and shelter, our need for belonging is so important. So emotionally intelligent teams are invaluable because they build chemistry with other people. And great chemistry between people in your teams leads to great teams. And great teams, it's not rocket science, leads to great work. Our return on investment for success, for emotional intelligence in terms of success, is well documented. If you're looking in the sales arena, we know that top performing salespeople are 12 times more productive than your bottom performing salespeople. And this was a study that was done just on performance alone on very average sales roles. So your accounts clerks, your sales clerks. When we look at the difference between the top and the average performer, we see that they are 85% more productive. This same study that was done on sales, different types of sales roles, when they looked at more complex sales roles, that 85% difference between your top performer and your average performer jumps to 127%. For those of you involved in sales, what would 127% more productivity mean for you? In project management, my world, my passion for so many years, we know that the human factors account for 80% and our technical factors account for 20% of our success rates, just in project management alone. And the research goes even further than this to say that those organizations that have got teams of people with strong emotional intelligence skills and capabilities are 50% more productive and 44% more profitable. These are really significant numbers. Even for small organizations, these are really significant numbers. And the next question we then have to ask ourselves is, okay, well, what accounts for this difference? Where is this difference coming from? And our success starts in the hiring process. And that's what today is all about, is front-ending some of these opportunities. You know, as a coach and as somebody who runs emotional intelligence assessments, 180-degree and 360-degree assessments, I often get involved at the tail end of a process. But I would love to be more involved at the front of the process to get the emotional intelligence skills and competencies sort of almost like weaving into a tapestry in how we go about hiring talent and how we go about promoting talent, not just when we've got an issue in our talent pool. So in recruitment, we know that we are looking at personality. Some of you might even do some personality assessments. We look at IQ, we look at people's ability, we look at their interests. We also look at their pedigree, you know, where did they study, what have they studied, what experience have they got? And what we see coming out of the data and the research is that about 20 to 25% of your candidates' success is down to their IQ, their intelligence. About 10 to 15% is down to personality. And then about 20 to 30% is down to emotional intelligence. I'm not going to split hairs here. It's almost a third, a third, a third. So if we can just all be comfortable with it being split evenly, a third, a third, and a third between IQ, personality, and emotional intelligence. And then if we look at our talent management process, we've got selection, development of new people coming into the organization, then talent management, and then transition, either transition into new roles, transition out of the organization. Today, I'm really just focusing on that first part, the selection part of the process. When we look at this part of our process, the selection part of the process, then emotional intelligence, the way that we can look at it from a hiring perspective is we can do an assessment during the hiring stage. And please distinguish between the personality type assessments, which are assessing type, and your emotional intelligence assessments, which are assessing competencies. These are two very different things, type and competencies. We can include competency-based interviewing, and in fact, I highly recommend competency-based interviewing, very important, or even behavior-based simulations for your more senior managers. Once onboarded, we can then allow our candidates to do a self-assessment. At this stage, we can't yet do a 180 or a 360 because we don't have an experience of them. But at least allowing them to do a self-assessment allows them to get that insight into how they are showing up. And then we can manage our talent using either 180-degree or 360-degree assessments. I'm not sure if any of you are already using any of these tools in your hiring process, in your talent management process. I'm accredited with an organization called Genos International. For the last 5 years, we've been top 20 in the whole world, across the board, not just for emotional intelligence, but across the board for assessments in the workplace. And I'm hugely privileged to be part of this team because they really do try and stay ahead of the curve in terms of what's happening in the world of work and in the way of work. But today is not an opportunity to talk about that. I really want to get into these first 3 phases, which is your selection process. And our GENOS assessment has 7 competencies, and these are your 7 flags that I wanted to share with you. So let's share now these 7 green flags, and I call them green flags because I want you to start paying attention to these competencies. These are your EI competencies in the hiring process. The first one being that ability to be self-aware. This is the distinction between somebody being present and mindful or somebody being very distracted and disconnected. And this is important because this is your candidate's ability to identify and understand their impact of that their feelings, thoughts, and decisions have had on their work. So we want to be asking questions around, do they understand the impact of their feelings, or how an event has triggered an emotion and how that impacted on their decisions and behaviors and performance at work. Self-awareness, we always start with awareness of self. We then move to emotional awareness of others. Now, this is the skill of perceiving and understanding other people's emotions. And here we're looking for signs that our candidate has an empathetic mindset rather than an insensitive mindset. And so your candidate, you want to know that they have an understanding of how to engage and respond with others. How have they motivated people in the past? How have they connected with people? What kind of a sense of their interpersonal effectiveness are you getting from the interview itself? And of course, when we use an assessment tool, we can assess these at a very objective rather than subjective manner. Emotional expression. So this is how we express our own emotions. And this is the reason why I asked you that question around how relaxed does this person make you feel? Did you feel authentic with that person, or did you feel really guarded? So emotional expression starts to talk to our ability to be authentic in how we show up. This is about creating a better understanding amongst colleagues so that we can create trust. And we know that trust builds those beautiful teams where chemistry is part of the fabric of how that team operates. Emotional reasoning. We're starting now to move from the awareness aspect of our competencies into a much broader thinking-based aspect of our competency. And this is important in decision-making. So here we are assessing whether somebody has expansive, broad way of thinking and decision-making, or if they're very limited. And then we look towards whether or not here we are interested in whether somebody's information that they're considered in the process is how do they get buy-in from other people? How are they maintaining that buy-in from other people? And then emotional self-management. Here we're looking at the skill of effectively managing one's own emotions. So this is the distinction between being resilient or temperamental. And here we want to get that insight into the person in terms of, how satisfied are they in their job, previous jobs, how engaged were they, how did they cope with high work demands, what kind of interpersonal effectiveness did they have? We want to get a gauge and get an understanding of emotional well-being. These are a lot of things for us to be able to assess in that short time frame in your recruitment process. So using an assessment tool can be really beneficial for you to gauge and get that objective data. The 6th competency is that of emotional management of others. This is the difference between being empowering of others and indifferent. And so here, this is about your candidate's capacity to generate performance in other people. It's about a positive and satisfying work environment and the capacity to deal with workplace conflict in an effective manner. And our 7th competence is that of self-control. So we've moved from the arena of awareness into thinking, into how we deal with other people. And now we're looking at how we manage self. So from an awareness of self to a management of self. And this is about being centered and grounded or reactive. Here is the capacity to really think clearly in those stressful situations and to be able to deal with those strong emotions. Because in any day in the workplace, our emotions are going to go, they're going to range from hour to hour, from meeting to meeting, from experience to experience. It's that ability to be controlled no matter where that roller coaster might be taking us. So these are your 7 key or green flags to start to pay attention towards. And like I said, we can use competency-based interviewing questions, but when we can use an assessment tool which gives us that objective outcome, that objective result, objective report, really is going to be far more beneficial for us. Now, the GENOS report, although it measures these 7 competencies, it actually has 82 items that it assesses. These 82 items are broken down into 70 items that will answer the questions around those 7 competencies, and 12 are specifically around trying to understand whether or not the candidate has given socially desirable responses. So have they inflated their answers? Have they manipulated? Have they been inconsistent? This is a great way for us to be able to build an insight of our candidates at the front of the process before we take them through the rest of the selection process or even our onboarding process. So just think about yourself, how valuable would it be for you to have an insight into even just the 70 items that measure the emotional intelligence, and then 12 items that are going to tell you whether or not this person is inflating their responses. What's important to note is these questions are asked in a random way, and the reason why we ask them in a random way is because we don't want our candidates guessing, oh, it sounds like they're asking me self-awareness questions. So we mix them up so that they don't, there's no predetermining what might come next. And because it's all online, you get your responses immediately. The GENOS Emotional Intelligence Assessment with these 7 competencies has been shown, research has shown that when people score high in these 7 areas, that we start to see higher scores in terms of performance all around, your leadership ability, resilience, teamwork, effectiveness, even employee engagement. This is really, if you think about your workplace right now and how people are struggling with uncertainty and struggling with adapting to new ways of working, trying to be flexible and agile and navigate these new ways of working. Leadership, effectiveness, resilience, teamwork, such important competencies to bring into your organization. And that's the start of the process. That really starts us with the screening of your candidates. When we move to the next phase, when we start to think about the interview phase, this is where I shared with you the importance of competency-based interview questions. And you might be asking, well, how do we ask these questions in for these 7 different competencies? Once you get the results, you will get a summarized page which has all the summary results for that candidate and then detailed results. And you will also get, for every competency, a set of competency-based, behavior-based questions that you can then use where you see that somebody either has a score that you would like to dig deeper on, or maybe you want to explore a little bit of one of their strengths. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to question the candidate in terms of 3 different types of questions. We're questioning their mindset in terms of their knowledge of this particular subject. So where is their attitude, their mindset? We also ask some questions around what have they actually put into practice when it comes to this particular competency. And we are then very interested in what outcomes have they actually generated when it comes to this competency. So there's 6 questions for each competency, 2 for mindset, 2 for practice, and 2 for outcomes. What this allows us then to do is it allows us to supplement our recruitment processes with these EQ-based insights and knowledge about our candidate that we wouldn't have ordinarily been able to get had we just gone through a question-based interview process. And the important thing here is we're not taking away from asking any of the other IQ or personality-based questions. We are supplementing and supporting your hiring process with these type of questions. So looking back at where we started at the beginning of this exercise, and I know some of you weren't here at the beginning, how many of these EI or people-related skills are on your JDs currently? And if you reflected back to that question that I asked you right at the beginning, what kinds of skills or competencies do you anticipate your teams needing in the next 5 to 10 years? How many of those do you see in these lists? Because when we need to focus on ensuring that we can hire, that we can develop, and that we can manage for these human factors, we really need to start paying attention to our emotional intelligence competencies. Even at, and I'm going to say most importantly at the beginning of the process, so that we start to front end some of these success factors for your organization. We saw it from the data: 55% more productive, 44% more profitable. So what are your next steps? Well, if you are interested in a Genos emotional intelligence report, please reach out to me. You can go and read more about the Genos emotional intelligence report on my blog. I've pasted it there on the bottom of the page. It's revoconsultant.com, and you can go onto my blog page. If you would like a sample report for your organization, please reply. You would have got a confirmation email. Please send me an email that will, and then we can have a 30-minute conversation, and I will gladly share with you a sample report. Over to you. So I'm going to ask you, have you got any questions or insights? Please feel free to use the chat feature. Please feel free to unmute, and just what stood out for you from today's showcase event? What stood out for you from today's webinar? You're very welcome to unmute or pop it into the chat feature. And while I'm waiting for you to do that, you know, if you had to say to me, Alison, what are the 3 things that you recommend I remember from today's session? These are my 3 key takeaway points. The first one being, emotional intelligence positively correlates with resilience. This is so important for us in the workplace now. Even if we had to forget about the financial business case for emotional intelligence in the workplace, creating this space of psychological safety where we are looking after our levels of occupational stress. For me, this is vital, really vital. And people with high EI demonstrate and show resilience in the workplace and in their private lives as well. This is not about changing or taking away from your current hiring practices. Rather, this is about supplementing and supporting your hiring practices. And thirdly, these are your 7 green flags. These are things to start to pay attention to. Please reach out to me if you would like a sample report, or if you are about to start a hiring process and you would like some support with that hiring process and would like to run a Genos EI assessment. And with that, I'm going to stop my screen share and I'm complete. Let me just see, there's a wonderful question here from Lauren. Hi, Lauren, welcome. Is it possible for an employer to develop an employee's EI over time? Absolutely. Meaning if someone is highly skilled in the area but struggling with emotional intelligence, would it be risky to hire that person? You know, Lauren, it depends on the requirements for your job, because context matters. Context is really important. So if you have got the time and the energy and the budget to put behind then supporting somebody with, after a period of time in the organization, allowing them to have that 180 or that 360-degree assessment, to have some emotional intelligence coaching, one-on-one coaching, absolutely, we can. How important is it right now for that person to collaborate, communicate, and to engage with other people? If the answer is not so important, you've got the luxury of time. But if they need to drop into the role and hit the ground running, and they are in a very people-centric role, I would say you are going to be taking on some risk, but just know that that is the risk that you are taking on and have a plan of action. So absolutely, emotional intelligence is demonstrated behavior. Emotional intelligence is all about competencies. We absolutely can learn the habits and develop the practices to develop EI for ourselves and our teams. What a beautiful question. Thank you so much for that, Lauren. And Sarabi has asked, it's great to see that there are personality assessments that focus on specific aspects of EI. Yes, so, you know, your personality assessments are going to give you that insights for each candidate to build their self-awareness. Remember, we are assessing type. Are you an extrovert? Are you an introvert? Are you more dominant? If we look at DISC, you know, dominant, or are you more steady? Are you more of a compliant type person? These are all the things we get from our more traditional personality tests, assessments. Where the EI assessments they look more at somebody's competency, their ability, their habits, their practices. Yes, and it's really great to see some of these assessments becoming more and more mainstream in organizations. And you are so welcome, Lauren. Thank you very much for that great question. I really enjoyed that question. And it's something that, you know, we all need to take cognizant of, is where are we currently? What is our current context? I always say to my clients, context matters, because it's the context that determines what is important. And that is the information that you need. Thank you so much, Sarabi. I really enjoyed having you on the presentation today. On the 10th of December, I'll be running a similar presentation, but it's all around emotional intelligence for project managers, specifically for project managers. If you know any project managers, if you would like to learn a little bit more about how EI applies to a specific type of role, please join me on the 10th of December. It'd be really wonderful to have you there. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Alison J. Coates on LinkedIn. And if you do want to ask any further questions around EI or around recruitment, I'd be happy to engage with you further. So if there are no further questions, thank you everybody for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to close the session and I look forward to engaging with you on my socials. Thank you, Lauren, and lovely to see you again, Tabo, twice in 2 days. That's fantastic. And Sarabi, and have a beautiful day, everybody.